I've been walking these streets for 25 years, pounding the pavements. I know what's going on in the back rooms. I know what's going on in the boardrooms. What's the Deal is the place where the purple people hang out. We're the only show on television that allows a Democrat, a Republican, and an independent to come down and talk it out. The #1 show on television that always focuses on crypto. We tell you what's the real deal.
Bottom line is, I don't care if they're having their convention in the Rust Belt or in the Sun Belt.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's What's the Deal on Newsmax TV. It's your weekly dose of sanity, where we bring a Republican, a Democrat, and an independent, and we talk out the issues of the week. Tons of stuff in the news this week. We're going to get down to it with the best experts around. We're following very closely the Tucker Carlson controversy, where Tucker said all of these crazy things in the past, and now they're all coming out and people are boycotting. I am challenging you to go out there and find some of the craziest things I have said in the past, and I've said a lot. Send them in. Let us know what you're hearing. Go to What's the Deal TV on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube. Let me hear what you think the worst things I've said are. Now, if there's anyone that knows the deal, it's New Yorkers. So it's ironic that so many of the national political stories dominating the headlines all have to do with New Yorkers who know politics. And we're joined by the guys who know politics, they know government, and they know what the deal is as good as anyone. We're joined by former New York Republican Congressman Vito Fossella and Democratic political consultant Scott Levinson, both joining us in a repeat performance. Scott's the founder and president of the Advance Group. First off, the world's most famous New Yorker, Donald Trump, has proposed his budget to Congress. Includes funding to the wall, much bigger than Nancy Pelosi's not 1 cent. Increasing funding for the military and massive spending for domestic spending. Congressman Vito Fossella, give us your take on the president's budget in New York.
The challenge that the president's going to have that he didn't have up in the last couple of years is he has a House that's controlled by the Democratic Party. And there's just going to be a built-in resistance, a different view of the role of government, different view of spending priorities. So it's going to be a challenge. And then ultimately you have to have the Senate that's just going to be weighing in on the side. So when all is said and done, whatever's in the budget right now will not be passed as law.
Scott,
you got to appreciate the congressman's candor. It's kind of rare in this day and age.
It's like campaign promises,
well,
right?
it's actually, the first budget, which is predictable. I think it has a lot of, on the spending side, what you pointed out, has cuts to public housing and HUD, has cuts to food stamps, nothing that would surprise anybody on the D side. And I think to the congressman's point, those are exactly the kind of things that he's going to have a hard time getting through with this Democratic Congress.
New York Mayor Bill de Blasio is rumored to be after the top job in the country himself, president, visiting Iowa, South Carolina, and Florida. He says his mind isn't made up yet about running, even though he's currently polling at 0 in Iowa. Does de Blasio have the right stuff for the White House?
Well, I mean, if they say you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. The guy's won twice, so I guess the answer is yes. The truth of the matter is nobody's smart enough to know whether he is or not running for president, but he's got a story to tell. You know, crime is as low as it's ever been in anybody's memory in this city, the tough city to manage. And he did some things that really changed people's quality of life, like universal pre-K, which you just can't sneeze at when there are millions of working women every day who are trying to raise kids. That's a godsend to folks.
There are other people who always criticize somebody they want to run, regardless of a Democrat or Republican. This is the beauty of America. Anybody, whether you like it or not, you have the right to run. So by all means, give it a shot if he wants. This field, you know, Scott's been around the block a long time. John, you've been around the block a long time. I don't recall a field so expensive, so large, at such an early stage in the process.
One of de Blasio's new initiatives is following in the footsteps of North Korea's Kim Jong-il and starting meatless Mondays in public schools.
I didn't know the North Korean president had started that program.
They have some very, very similar programs.
I did not know that was
in North Korea. But how soon do you think this trend will go nationwide?
I'm a little weirded out by the resistance to something that's just healthy and good. and important to start changing our eating habits. For a long time, we just ate unhealthy without.
So
any
meat is
mind.
bad in
No,
your view?
I wouldn't say that. I think things are necessary in moderation.
We have a public health initiatives. People want healthy lives. They want healthy things in their food. They want, labeling and to know what people are eating. But when all is said and done, the role of government is not to dictate, in my opinion, what you should or shouldn't eat. One can argue that you got to have a low carb diet, so that you have carb free Monday.
There was Pizza Fridays, wasn't there?
Pizza Fridays. You know what?
You know
I
what?
remember
Yeah, we love
pizza
pizza.
being-
Pizza Fridays, I got
So,
no
but nobody
problem with,
complained
but,
about it, so
meatless.
come on.
Pizza's like, hey,
So-
if you
so if I
want
wanna
pizza,
listen.
it's
So
not
wait a
like
second.
you can't
So if I
have
called
meat.
it Pizza Mondays instead of Meatless Mondays, we'd be good.
Totally different.
Of course.
Totally
Of course.
totally different thing.
Got that.
Pizza's like, hey, anyone can have pizza. Meatless means you cannot have something we said.
So it's a packaging issue.
Well, it sounds
the
like it to
Tuesdays,
me.
yeah.
I mean, listen, my two brothers are in a keto battle right now, and all they're eating is meat. So, one could say meat is good, another could say meat is bad, but I don't think it's for the mayor to talk about the menu. Guys, great conversation. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to ask Vito and Scott to stay with us. You stay tuned for these commercials, and we'll be back right after this. Kirsten Gillibrand, polling zero, lied in her Senate race when she said on stage that she would not be running for president. She would serve out her term. She's polling at zero, and now she's hit with a serious Me Too issue because one of her staffers alleged that another staffer harassed her, and she didn't do anything about it. Vito, should she be out of the race?
No, I don't know. I don't honestly know enough about what happened or what didn't happen, and that's part of the result of really trying people in the public eye in this latest movement. What was created in the last 2 years was we condemn somebody who's accused, and you never give that person an opportunity to defend themselves. We saw it in the Kavanaugh hearings, for example. So it's not for me to judge. Once again, I think if you play by their standards, then she shouldn't.
The congressman.
How much of a hurdle is this
The
for
congressman
Gillibrand
doesn't
right
need
now?
me to blow smoke, but that even-temperedness is what's missing from today's politics. It's the easiest thing to do to condemn the U.S. senator who, when I spoke to her folks, seemingly went through a process, investigated a process, reprimanded and demoted someone who was not yet met the standard, didn't fire at first because the evidence didn't reach the level. When the evidence was presented to them that reached the level, they terminated.
Last question, guys. Aside from Donald Trump, the most talked about New Yorker in politics these days is AOC. She chased Amazon out of New York City within her first couple of months in office. It took her a couple of months to open a constituent office in her district, and now she's under fire for attacking President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Ronald Reagan, saying they were racist. Is the press paying too much attention to AOC?
Whether they are or they aren't. What's important is the 2020 election. Do the positions that she's espousing and people who are like-minded, do they resonate with the American people? Do they build a broader coalition Democratic Party? Is there an older guard in the Democratic Party that feels threatened and either embraces it or repudiates it? So I think
Absolutely right.
Is the,
And to
government-
your
is the-
point,
is the media paying too much attention to her?
And to your point, she's a rock star. I mean, as substantively
I don't think I made
correct.
that point, that she was a
well,
rock star.
and is she getting a tremendous amount of attention? A tremendous amount of attention. We run an internship program in my office. When the interns found out she was in my office, they ran back to see her.
On the intern-
and I will tell you, consistent with the intern story, one of the reasons why her message is resonating is because for a lot of my young interns, they're not feeling like the current system is working.
Congressman Vito Fossella, Scott Levinson, I want to thank you guys very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, John.
They're such professionals that they didn't even, I couldn't even get them to argue with each other. But very informed commentary on what's the deal. We try to bring people in that kind of know where the rubber meets the road and have a discussion. A Republican, a Democrat, an independent, and there's no yelling, there's no screaming, there's not all noise, there's some intellectual thought. And thank you guys for keeping our standard.
Thank you.
Thank you for being there for us. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Watch the commercials, because without the commercials, they're going to take us off, and then we can't have Democrats, Republicans, and independents on. You're watching What's the Deal? The show that doesn't kneel. And after this, we're going into business, we're going into entrepreneurialism, we're going into innovation and the new economy, cryptocurrency. All that and more coming up right after this. You're watching What's the Deal? Welcome back. I'm John Tobacco. You're watching What's the Deal on Newsmax TV, the show that gives you the real deal on all the news that's fit to watch. We have multiple seasoned political professionals tonight. You just heard from former Congressman Vito Fossella and Scott Levinson on the left, duking it out on a host of issues. And now we go to the ladies. They should have come first, but on the right, we're joined by accomplished Republican strategist Jessica Proud. And on the left, we're joined by a veteran Democratic strategist, Naila Like Umbrella Amaru. And in the center, our center guest is not here, so I'm going to play the role of the centrist because I'm an independent. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us tonight on What's the Deal. And we have so many things going on in the political landscape, so many that are like important right here in New York City, but global macro issues. Recently, the Democratic National Party said that they're going to have their convention in Milwaukee. That'll be decided at the 2020 convention. And Tom Perez, DNC chairman, selected the Wisconsin city over Houston and Miami. It's the biggest city in a swing state that was won by Donald Trump because Hillary didn't want to get her out there, and Trump got out there in the last days of the campaign. What should we read into this when the Democratic Party says, oh, damn, Hillary didn't go to Milwaukee, Trump won Wisconsin, and now the convention is there? Jessica, what are they saying?
I mean, it was such a colossal embarrassment that they lost it and had not tried to compete for it and campaign there. So I think they had to do something to send a signal. But the bottom line is, I don't care if they're having their convention in the Rust Belt or in the Sun Belt. Ultimately, it's going to be whoever the Democratic nominee is and their policies that is going to be what motivates voters to come out to vote. I mean, every time you have the site selection of the conventions, it's always the debate of like, you know, does this matter politically? And I think the answer is no. They had to send a signal that they learned a very embarrassing lesson, but I don't think that this is going to play any role in actual votes.
From the Democratic side, what do you think?
So from the Democratic perspective, you know, selecting Wisconsin is largely symbolic to the points that were already raised. Democrats, we have always counted on Wisconsin as an easy Democratic win, and because of campaign decisions, we lost it by 1% to Trump in 2016. So I think that the selection the DNC made has been sending a message that, number one, the Midwest is in play. We're not taking any states, particularly the Midwest, for granted anymore. And two, this is almost like a do-over. We're going back to a state that we didn't campaign in as we should have, and really basically sending a message saying, we're coming, we're recording the votes, and the Midwest is in play.
So 2020 is a do-over year, in your view, for Wisconsin at least. But the House of Representatives passed a resolution last week condemning hate and bigotry. They couldn't identify Ilhan Omar's exact statements and condemn Jewish bigotry, but they made a macro. And some people said it would have been more narrowly targeted as a resolution opposing anti-Semitism. The president this week also criticized the Democratic Party as anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic. Does the Democratic Party have a Jewish problem?
Absolutely not. I think the recent, I guess, very public fight within the Democratic Party has reflected the diversity of our party, right? And I think that, you know, the comments that were made and the resolution that was initially supposed to try and target Ilhan Omar, Congresswoman from Minnesota, and the controversy in having that resolution move from just targeting her to more of a broader
Let's knock out all hate.
Right.
Let's not worry about what she said. Let's just say all hate is no good.
Right, and I think that again was a direct reaction to fighting back from the left side of the party, saying we can't target criticism of Israel and necessarily lump that as anti-Semitism. At the same time, again, I think that Speaker Pelosi is in a new situation because this is a brand new congressional members. There's a lot of energy, and there are a lot of different lived experiences and different perspectives. And I think that that's what the most recent fight reflects in terms of the Democratic Party.
Jessica, is this showing their diversity when they say we're going to condemn all hate, or is this showing the Democratic Party afraid to zero in on the new members who are killing it?
And the hypocrisy of it all, because let's be honest, if the Republicans had handled it that way with Steve King, they would be going bananas. We would never hear the end of it. You'd be accused of being racist, of the same things that the other side is saying now. But look, you should call anti-Semitism needs to be called out for what it is. And this is not her first comment. She's made other comments in the past. The left's embrace of Louis Farrakhan and this really just outrageous, horrific things that he said about the Jewish population.
Cockroaches.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Why are we protecting these people? Like, what are they trying to gain from all that? It's stupid politically, and I think that it's by not stamping it down and doing the right thing from the outset, I think it is going to cause
Well,
a
Steve
problem.
King on the Republican side, for asking a question, when did nationalism become a bad word, right? They stripped him of every duty he had.
Yes.
And now Ilhan Omar, this is her second, maybe third time that she's singled out Jewish people, Israel, etc., with anti-Semitic remarks, and they can't even zero in on her for any penalty. Just say, hey, everyone, we're all going to say we hate hate overall.
So 2 points of distinction. Number one, Steve King has years and years of history of making very
Ilhan Omar
controversial
does not.
remarks.
She doesn't.
With
My question is, she doesn't?
So my question is, I think that's a matter of perspective, which reflects, I think, the differences in how people across America think, right? So there's part of America that thinks that her remarks reflect critiquing Israeli policy, where there's another part of the country that believes that she's being anti-Semitic. And so I think that, again, the question is, is she or isn't she? That depends on, I guess, who is doing the asking. But again, that reflects, even within the Democratic ranks, the breakdown within the party.
But I asked you a question. Doesn't she have a long history of anti-Semitic remarks before she was in Congress?
Not that I am familiar with. I am most familiar with the recent remarks that she has made while she has been a public figure. If she has made remarks before she was in office of that, I am not
You're not
aware.
aware of that.
I am not aware of that. My understanding is that these remarks have been while she has been in office as a new Congress member.
In announcing their debate criteria, the DNC indicated that Fox News would not be permitted to host a single Democratic presidential debate. Some say the network is propaganda for the Trump White House. I say MSNBC, CNN, and a host of others are Democratic propaganda against the White House.
You are fake news. Sir. Go ahead.
Others are saying that this move is short-sighted by the DNC, and at a time when the party needs to reach more swing voters. What say you guys? Jessica?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like you're running for president. If you can't handle the heat and get out of the kitchen, like, you should be able to answer difficult questions, even if they're posed from, a panelist that might be a little right of center. You should be able to handle those questions because you know what? You're not going to win the general election without those voters and communicating to those voters. To me, if they, if they isolate themselves with just MSNBC and just adhering to the far left of the party and end up with a nominee like that, they're going to end up in a more difficult spot in the general election, having to communicate with.
Should the
those
Republican
independents.
Party say we're not holding any debates or discussions on CNN or MSNBC?
I think that's up to the Republican Party. I think this is a situation where.
Well, you're a strategist. I'm
Yes.
asking you, do you think the Republican Party should retaliate and say, we're not coming on your network?
No, I think the role of any political party would be to reach as many voters as you can. And whether that means going into the lion's den, if you will, then that means going to the lion's den. And so I think that, it is unfortunately a lost opportunity for the Democratic Party to reach people in Michigan, to reach people in Ohio. But I understand that the key reasoning for that was, again, because the DNC believes that Fox has a close relationship with the president.
In the last presidential campaign, former DNC chairwoman Donna Brazile was outed as sharing questions in a debate with Hillary Clinton. So
That, and also the fact that during the campaign, Donald Trump really put himself in front of the press all the time, answered questions, while Hillary hadn't done news conferences for months at a time. And I think that ended up being a really wise political strategy on his part, because he showed that he was willing to put himself out there.
I watch MSNBC in the morning to try to get myself excited, to get so mad at all the crap that I think they're selling to America. And I call it Morning Joke because I get a good laugh out of Morning Joe. But when I look at this stuff, I'm like, nothing is absolute in life, right? So how can you get up every day on one network and not ever say one single thing good? Like, the president has a nice tie on today. I like that tie. Or the employment numbers were great last month. I hate him, but he did good on the employment. How could it be? Because we're taught, like, as kids and as brothers and sisters and as spouses, and we're taught nothing is absolute. But when you turn on MSNBC and CNN, it's 100% Trump negative. Does he not do one thing right?
Well, I think the same could be said, about, any other conservative or, conservative-leaning outlet. You have your audience, and so I think that, the cable media reflects, I think, the current political environment of where we are as an American electorate. It's very much us versus them, and it's very polarizing. And so there really is not a lot of space to have those conversations, to meet in the middle and really think through. We may disagree with 80% of each other's perspectives and frameworks, but let's begin with that 20% that we can agree with and try to work towards some type of policy solution for functioning government.
On What's the Deal, as the host, executive producer, I like to try to get a whole bunch of different views on and let people talk about it and let our audience at home hear all the perspectives, right?
Fight it out and stand by your beliefs.
There's really nothing like that on television, right? Like you said, if you want to watch what the left has to say, you put on these channels. If you want to watch what the right has to say, you put on these channels. Don't you think we're getting to a point in the political discourse where people are like, I know I am. I'm like, well, I don't want to put on this crap because I know what they're saying. And I don't want to put on Fox even because I know what they're saying. There's like, is it almost entertainment now, or is it news?
I mean, look, I think, as a Republican, it was refreshing when Fox would start to cover stories that you couldn't get covered in the mainstream media. They were being suppressed by editors at the major networks, not even talking about other cable networks, but the main, your ABC nightly news and such. So they filled a void, and I think that's why they had such high ratings. But now it does reinforce all those, the ingrained stereotypes and positions, and it's hard to get. But that's the reason why you should kind of break that up as a candidate. You want to be president of the whole country. You should go in front of everybody.
That's why we're here on What's the Deal.
Exactly.
Right?
I think you should host a debate.
Yeah. Jessica's got the idea. Hey, you, Tom Perez, we want to debate on Newsmax on What's the Deal. Last question, ladies. Thank you so much for staying with us. Many in the Democratic Party have called for impeachment. Now, Nancy Pelosi has pulled the reins back a little bit and said, you know what, I don't think we need impeachment. I'm not sure about it. It's divisive. She also added that Trump's not worth it. So do you think they're starting to realize that they don't have the collusion, right? And now, if they start digging too deep into all this crap just to find a little reason to impeach, it'll kill their 2020 strategy. Why not impeach? They all wanted to impeach. Maxine Waters said all Trump voters are scumbags. That's what she said. And she said, I'm going to impeach, I'm going to impeach. And one of the recent congressional members said, now we're gonna impeach this mother effer. Everybody was on the impeach train, and now Nancy is like the adult in the room. What's happening?
So there's the theatrics of politics, and then there's the act of governing. And so I think that the Democratic Party under the leadership of Speaker Pelosi is beginning to realize that there's a decision that has to be made. Do we want to be sidetracked, with the news of the day of what Trump said or what he's about to do or what he is about to say, versus the really the difficult and long, hard work of governing, of being effective in the legislative body on Capitol Hill. And I think that when we're talking about impeachment from the campaign trail, it makes for cheers and applause from a certain group of people. But at the end of the day, our elected officials were elected to be effective. And the talk of impeachment is to take away from the act of governing and passing bills and working in the highest levels of our government here in America to making sure that we're passing bills that help the American people. And I think that to that point, a decision was made from a strategic perspective of, do we want to,
Let's stop this.
Shake our fist versus let's just get to the work of governing.
Get to the work.
I'm going to be much more cynical and say that this was purely a political calculation.
This is the question.
Look, she is speaker today because they, in this last cycle, were able to win back seats that are more moderate and centrist, and those seats are going to be up on the line in 2020. And I think they're looking back to the mistake Republicans made in impeaching Bill Clinton and really getting backlash from the country on overstepping. The fact that they haven't found collusion, there's nothing to indicate anything rises to the level of impeachment. It's purely a political calculation, both for her own power and staying speaker and for winning the seats and keeping the seats that they won in the last cycle. So, look, I'm not saying, I don't think anything's set in stone. I think she, is a very calculating individual and did that, with politics purely in mind.
We had an amazing set of men, Congressman Vito Fossella and Democratic strategist Scott Levinson a little earlier, but the women completely outshine the men. We should have had the women first. My producer, Frank Morano, it's a ladies first model we're going with here from now on. You know what I mean? And it's actually better in the content area that we had you second, because especially here in New York, women are in the majority. Us men, there's only 46% of New Yorkers are men and 54% of women. So, and the women have such a more sane view of things, if you ask me. But I want to thank you both for civil debate and discussion. And I hope you'll come back and be on What's
Love
the Deal.
to.
And if either of you from your high perch as strategists in the Republican and Democratic Party can talk to either party about a debate right here on What's the Deal, we'd love to have you. But want to have you guys back. I want you back right after these commercials. Stay tuned to the commercials. Call in, answer, do something so they know you're watching. And without our sponsors, we won't be on anymore. We can't bring you these beautiful ladies. We can't bring you this great content. But we'll be back right after this, guaranteed. You're watching What's the Deal, the show that doesn't kneel. Hey, welcome back. You're watching What's the Deal. I'm John Tobacco. We got through all that politics stuff. We went to the left, we went to the right, we went to the men, we went to the women. But now let's get down to what's going to be at the heart of the 2020 campaign. The economy, the business environment, and entrepreneurialism. All the things that I think Donald Trump's economy are spurring on. Tonight, we come with a guest host panel of all sectors. We have professionals, we have entrepreneurs, and we have the academia with us. Casey Coleman, the CEO of Monex, a blockchain-based contract management system for small to medium-sized businesses and law firms, is with us tonight. Casey is also a New York Times bestseller for his book Shooter. He was an infantry officer in the Marines. And Casey, thank you, God bless you for your service to America. And our slogan at What's the Deal is the show that doesn't kneel. So we salute you on What's the Deal. Gregory Magershak back for his second time on What's the Deal. He's the founder and CEO of Intercoin. They also, most recently that I noticed, took a life-size billboard on the side of a building here in Manhattan to promote Intercoin. Insert photo of building right there, edit team.
I drew it myself.
His company, Cubix, builds social networks for communities and has attracted over 6 million people around the world. And you can learn more about Intercoin by going to www.intercoin.org. And of course, from the academic side, we have Dr. Michael Busler with us. He's a PhD, he's a public policy analyst, economics expert, and a professor of finance at Stockton University in New Jersey. Also a featured columnist right here on Newsmax, LifeZet, and townhall.com. Guys, thank you all for joining us tonight. To me, 25 years on Wall Street, I kind of look at this stuff and say, hey, whether I like Trump or not, the macros that I see, the economy is doing better. I'm going to go to you first. You're the academic. You're supposed to be the smartest among us. But is the economy, I don't care about your politics.
Yeah.
Is the economy doing better under Donald Trump?
It is doing much better, and it's exactly what we needed. When we came out of the last recession, economic policy should have been geared toward increasing economic growth. Instead, the prior administration, under Barack Obama, set their primary goals as curing perceived social injustices. It's injustice everybody doesn't have health care. It's injustice that CEOs make more than the average person. It's injustice that big banks take advantage of consumers. So by concentrating on trying to cure those perceived social injustices, it slowed down economic growth. And in fact, President Obama is the only president in US history to serve a term in office without having at least 1 year where economic growth was at least 3%.
Are Trump's policies also spurring on access to capital and innovation in your view?
High-level government policy of any flavor takes a while to filter down to folks that are just living their life and going about things their own way.
Well, I can tell you from my own experience, as well as other entrepreneurs, that when investors invest in your company, it's because they see a market for what you are doing. They see demand. So when you say you need people to have money, disposable income, it's not just necessarily the people that are really wealthy or a corporation, because a lot of the products are being spent on Main Street. You're buying Gillette razors for shaving, you're buying whatever. So you need all sectors of society to have money. So I think it's very healthy to have sort of people of all means, including possibly people that don't have a job, to be able to spend something. And an entrepreneur like me, I'm not going to convince an investor by saying, look, you got a tax break, man. Can you just give that money to me? That's not going to convince him.
When people decide they've stopped looking for jobs, they no longer get counted as unemployed.
Correct.
And when they actually come back and say, hey, I'm looking for a job again, that makes the unemployment numbers actually go up.
Job matching technology is certainly there to a certain degree. The problem is that when you're outside of a very constrained set of employment activities that you need to have, making the decision to employ someone, whether temporary or longer, takes into account a whole range of other factors that just technology alone is wholly unqualified to do. And so and that doesn't even take into account systemic changes in the economy that require retraining of folks to get back into new positions there as well. And so that's still going to be humans that are going to be doing that, which may mean more jobs and more stress on the labor force in a positive direction. But for a long time, that's going to require humans to make those types of decisions.
I'm going to say just 3 facts, okay? 1 in 3 Americans is 1 paycheck away from homelessness. maybe the GDP is up, but these Americans are not getting they're not feeling that.
Well, no, I'm gonna. I was going to allow you to spout off the left-wing talking points, but
Well, it's just
one
a
in
fact.
3 Americans is not one paycheck away from homelessness. 1 in 3 Americans is living paycheck to paycheck. That doesn't mean they're a paycheck away from homelessness. So many people. I mean, my father was a cop.
Right.
And I know there were times when he didn't have, we wanted to go to the fair or go to, a weekend away. And I know he didn't have the money, but as a family, you figure out how to take from Peter to pay from Paul, and you create your own payable, receivable system.
I think there'll be more manufacturing jobs. Most people seem to think that automation is going to take away jobs. Automation will add more jobs. It'll make labor more productive. You have somebody working in a field with no tools, he doesn't produce anything. You give him tools, he starts producing. You give him tractors and radio-controlled equipment, he starts producing a whole lot.
Exponential.
It frees other people.
Can I just say one thing to that?
We have less than 2% of the population now in agriculture, and they feed half the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I hate to bring up a Columbia economist, but Joseph Stiglitz said the same thing, I know. But you know how many people were working on farms before the Great Depression? 20%. 1 in 5 Americans were employed in farm-related jobs. The Great Depression happened because we automated a lot of the factory work. It's actually not necessary. You could automate stuff and not create jobs. So people moved to the cities, and we got our manufacturing sector through all that stuff.
If we're going to be in fair competition with China, and we're going to get a fair trade balance,
Exactly.
whatever you need, the steel, the components you need to make the robots, then those are all people that have to be retrained to make the parts, to make the robots who work in the factory. So there is also this multiplier effect when technology comes around. If the government and the people themselves can figure out ways to get retrained, the jobs are replaced.
Mostly the robots make the robots.
The robots make the robots.
Mostly.
I will agree.
The humans design the robots, but the robots make the robots. So
That's like 50 years away, but it's true. But I will say,
no, I mean, from a production capacity,
Yeah.
from a production standpoint, it's not 50 years away. It's today.
Yeah.
Some robots make robots.
This is
The humans design them.
This is for me, one of my favorite segments tonight, because we went from agriculture to robots, making robots, and then I guess there's some other robots who make the robots who make the new robots, and soon there will be no humans, and there will be no what's the deal, I guess, or maybe we'll have a robot sitting here. What's the deal? But I want to thank you guys. These aren't talking heads. These aren't the people that went to. You guys may have went to Harvard, but we're not looking for the people that went to Harvard and Yale, and these days maybe their moms paid $1 million for them to get into Harvard or Yale or Stanford on some fake athletic scholarship, according to today's news. But these are people that know where the rubber meets the road. They're in the trenches. They're teaching the youth of America. They're out there raising money, trying to bring new innovation and technology to you, and we're trying to bring them to you every week. Guys, thank you very much. Thank you. Hopefully we'll have you back very soon. You're watching What's the Deal? We have a veteran on set with us, so I will remind you, What's the Deal is the show that doesn't kneel. We'll be back right after this. Hey, welcome back. You're watching What's the Deal? I'm John Tobacco. The biggest thing that I see in the news, the tsunami that's out there that keeps coming up, and people are starting to understand it a little more every day, is privacy. Everyone we know is on their phone, they're on their computer, and all of that information that you think you're sending to your mom or your sister or your kid, that's going out into the universe, and there are hundreds, if not thousands of companies that are buying that data to find out every single last thing about you. Our privacy as Americans is under attack. Your data is not safe. Your data that you put into your phone when you think you're liking your kid's Instagram post is telling a whole host of people who want to know what you're doing, everything about you. And as we move our technology into the new frontier, we want to look for innovators and entrepreneurs on What's the Deal that bring you the best of the best to address these new problems that are facing us. And tonight, the best of the best, we have Joe DiRenzo with us. Joe is the co-founder of Blackout Mobile. And Blackout Mobile is bringing to market an ultra-secure privacy smartphone to help you secure your data. And ultimately, if your data is being sold, you get a piece. Joe, thanks for joining us tonight on What's the Deal? Thank you for your company and your entrepreneurship for attacking this problem that's facing America and ultimately the world. How big of a deal is security when it comes to your smartphone these days?
Your cyber DNA is evolving every day, and it's being exploited by, who? The Googles, the Facebooks, and the Twitters of the world. So what we've come up with at Blackout is a hyper-secure, hardened Android GPR smartphone that does not compromise or exploit your metadata. It doesn't distribute it, nor does it collect it in a manner that's harmful to the individual. And what Blackout's doing with the Cloak phone, it's bringing the power and the control of privacy, the luxury of privacy, back to the end user. It's a way to communicate, surf the web in a truly private environment, a VPN within a VPN. So with the swipe of your finger, you can totally go off the grid.
Off the grid.
Totally off the grid. And
I don't want Siri listening to me while I'm in the bathroom. I don't want ads popping up that I'm passing by a Starbucks.
Correct.
I want to go off the grid. I swipe my finger on the Cloak phone.
Correct.
And I'm Johnny Anonymous.
Correct.
No one knows where I am. No one can get my data. No one can share me. Nobody can swipe me. No one can like me.
Exactly. We're not just selling a phone. We're selling a service. We're selling a way of life to go. If you really want to live a private life again and have some comfort when you go to bed at night, that your emails, your photos, and your things of that nature are not being compromised, Cloak's phone's for you.
That's right.
And you're going to see a lot of people really making that change little by little.
You know what? I'm 51 years old. And years ago, Joe, you may remember that we had the phone on the wall with the little round thing like this.
Correct.
And when you wanted privacy and you didn't want anybody to bother you,
you
took the phone off the hook, tucked it under a pillow on the couch or something, and went to bed. And no one could call you, no one could reach you. And I feel like Cloak phone, with one swipe of the finger, can reenact
take you
that
right off the
same
grid.
thing, take you off the grid, leave me alone, big data, stop stealing from me, stop reselling me. Joe, I want to thank you for coming down.
Thank you.
If you're watching at home, go to cloakphone.com. Find out more about the company, all the great things they're doing. Find out how they're raising money, why they're raising money, and why a Cloak phone may be great for you. Joe DiRenzo, CEO of Cloak phone, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Action-packed show this week. Before ending this week, I want to talk to you about a new segment that we're going to start next week, Naked and Afraid, where we look at companies that are publicly traded and under attack by naked short sellers. People who are out there and unfairly manipulating stock prices for their own personal gain. So stay tuned next week when we tell you about the companies that are under attack and we tell you what to look out for. We talked about your privacy, which is one of the most important liberties and freedoms we have. Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode of What's the Deal, and we'll see you again next week.